It's the 2nd of November, Tuesday, 2021. This podcast brought to you by Chugwater Chili, the gourmet spice of Western life. Holiday discounts are coming. There's going to be new discounts every week during the month of November. Act early. With all the supply chain and shipping issues coming on up, you want to get your Christmas gifts ordered and get them in the pipeline as soon as you possibly can. Free shipping on Chugwater Chili and all orders over $50. Discount will be automatically applied at checkout at chugwaterchili.com. And certainly it's been chilly weather. Good weather to have a big pot of chili, as it's going to be another cold, soupy day for many of you, especially in the southern areas, southern Wyoming, parts of Nebraska, Colorado, Kansas. Northern areas like Montana, northern and central Wyoming will begin to clear on out, as well as many areas across the Dakotas, but it's still going to be soupy for a lot of you. The trend towards drier conditions is continuing towards mid to late in the week. We only have one little front coming through on Friday, and that's really about it. We still expect a more active pattern towards the middle of next week. Another strat warm coming in early December, ? Strat warm means when the stratosphere warms up over the polar regions, that leads to colder weather, and we see it on the modeling. Another strat warm, this would be the second one already this season. That's something we'll take a look at. Something to kind of put in your back pocket and remember as we get to the end of November and early December, as that is a cold signal. Whether or not it comes to fruition, we don't know, but we'll show you what it looks like. Today's satellite photo looks a lot like yesterday. You see clouds streaming in from the Pacific Northwest through the Central Rockies. Cold air is backed up against the Continental Divide from that cold surge that came in on Sunday, and that's being overrun by this Pacific moisture and jet stream energy coming on through. So you can see the clouds, and this is where the soupy areas are going to be today. But as we go forward, high pressure that's building in here along the west coast is going to slip inland. But today, we have a little bit of a ripple here, that northwest flow keeping that Pacific moisture in place. But as we go into Thursday night and Friday, here's that next front, not a big one. It will bring some rain and snow to Montana, Idaho, parts of the Pacific Northwest, northern Wyoming and southern Montana, and probably western South Dakota. Thursday night and Friday, you're going to get a little bit of rain and snow shower activity, but the system is going to do what we call minor out, kind of basically get absorbed by the rest of the jet stream and weaken as it heads east. What that does is allow a nice area of high pressure to develop. Boy, this is looking like a really nice stretch of weather this weekend. We've got a broad area of high pressure that comes into the Intermountain West. So we're going to have some really nice weather this weekend, considering it's the first full weekend in November. Now, the Pacific Northwest starts to get wet again with a strong, cold, moist onshore flow. And as we showed you yesterday, a lot of cold air up in the Gulf of Alaska and increasing jet stream winds again, similar to what happened in late October. That's going to be happening again across the North Pacific. And as we go into next Wednesday, you can really see that. Boom, you get this system right here gets jettisoned east from the Pacific Northwest and then to and through the Continental Divide. This is a classic La Nina pattern where you get a quick moving, very moist, strong wave that comes off the west coast and through the central and northern Rockies. This is the type of pattern that's really good for the mountains. East of the Continental Divide, on the plains, it is not, because the winds tend to downslope. You don't get that upslope, but rather downslope east of the mountains. It will certainly get colder by the middle of next week with some rain or snow showers. But as we mentioned in yesterday's podcast, these moist, energetic, and cold northwest winds coming in to the west is just a very good way to make it snow in the high country. And we think that's going to be the way November and early December will go to get that snowpack built up. And then that hopefully is going to translate to good news for all you folks who like to strap skis on later this month and into early December. If you were to look at the 10-day forecast for precipitation, look at all the wet in the Pacific Northwest down into central California. And then as you get east of the west coast, you have these bands of moisture that hit the mountain areas with decreasing amounts of moisture the further inland you go, as all these mountain ranges suck up a lot of the moisture. But this is a pattern that is very productive for the high country, and you can see it in the snowfall forecast over the next 10 days. Even down into the central and southern Sierras, good moisture there. And speaking of that, I want to give folks good news, because a lot of times you only hear about bad news with the weather. But the Sierra Nevada snowpack, and why is this important? Why am I talking about California? Because When you get into a winter season and you look at the weather patterns that move west to east from the Pacific into the Intermountain West, it really is important to watch what's going on in the Pacific Northwest and Central and Northern California, because that weather ends up here. If you were to look at the Northern Sierra snowpack and precipitation so far for the water year, the new water year started in October, and look at the amount of moisture, if you were to average these 8 precipitation stations together, that's almost 500% of average, a far cry to where we were in October 2020. So that is really good news. Even the Central Sierra is over 300% of average. So that's good news considering the drought conditions gripping the West. And we do think that at least through the rest of the fall and at least into the start of winter, we see these trends continuing. In fact, we'll see that with that wave next week. Want to show you something really interesting. We always talk about analog weather forecasting. We try to find where we have seen patterns like we're experiencing now in the past, because weather patterns repeat themselves, not exactly, but they do repeat themselves. And one interesting thing is I took a really close look at where we are with sea surface temperature anomalies across the globe from where we are now to previous years. And one year that is showing up, and this is not surprising because it's basically on the same solar cycle setup, but this is where we are right now with the cold sea surface temperatures out across the subtropical Pacific. Yesterday I showed you this pocket of warm water here backed up against this pocket of cold water here, responsible for these really strong moist jet stream winds, and that's what's going to be happening next week. But if you were to look at where we are here in 2021 to where we were at the same time in 2010, now they're not exactly the same, but they're very intriguing, because here we are in 2021. In 2010, we had a warm pool in the North Pacific, a cold pool in the Gulf of Alaska, and we were in a full-fledged La Nina. Full-fledged La Nina gaining strength, warm pool, cold pool. Now, in the 2010-2011 snow year, it was a big snow year. Snowpacks were far above average in the winter of 2010 and 2011. The weather on the plains wasn't necessarily moist that year, but the mountains got big, big snow. Whether or not this pattern holds, I think it is another indication we're headed towards a good snowpack year in the western United States, and I'll include many areas of Canada in that as well. The stratospheric warming, we call it a strat warm. Now this is going out 840 hours from now. So this is really pushing the limits of weather modeling. This is for the 6th of December. See all of this warmth right here in the high stratosphere? So if we do see this developing, this big stratospheric warming event, as we get into early December, that could send cold air into the lower 48. It could also send cold air into parts of Europe, and it could also send cold air into parts of Asia and Russia. So this is something that we'll do the trademark question mark. Could this happen? Maybe, but this is something to put a bug in your ear for early December to see what the weather may turn like. Could be turning colder if this does develop. We'll keep an eye on it for you. Have yourself a great Tuesday. We'll talk to you on Wednesday.